welcome back to the Film Alchemist podcast, the show where we take the movies we love, break them apart, to find out what gives them their magic. I'm your host, Josh Griffey, joined as always by my friend, co-host, and guy who never checks his radiator tubes.
Oh, definitely Alex Dandino.
That's Alex Dandino. All right, people, before we begin this exciting new curation, a little business. It's official. We're on Patreon. That's right, patreon.com/filmalchemistpod. The best way to help us grow the show. The best way to support the show. But also, the best way to get the most out of the show. We have an ever-growing Patreon exclusive library over there. If you're one of our patrons, you actually get a vote on what goes in that library every month. So you can start making the show more of what you want. We have a mini-series, Tales from the Crypt mini-series, and some others on the way. Feature-length commentaries. You can even get us to record a double feature for you of your pick. So we work really hard over there to try to make that worth everyone's time and while. We appreciate the support, I should say. So thank you for everyone who does support us. Thank you if you're about to as well. The YouTube is Film Alchemist. See the faces. I'm back to mustache. So hide your ladies. Hide any ladies in your vicinity when you watch. Yeah. Or men's. I just hide anyone. The mustache is a power tool. The Film Alchemist have an email. We have an email, filmalchemistpod@gmail.com. You can find us on all the socials you're on. Share, retweet, all that good stuff helps us out. You can also make sure to leave ratings and reviews everywhere and anywhere you find podcasts. The new thing we're asking people to do, help us out. If you have a friend who loves movies, send them an episode, DM them, text them, right? Listen to it with them when you have them trapped in your car, whatever. Play an episode, and we'll take it from there and become their new best friends, too. That's something you can do for free that helps us out. We're going to Ponzi scheme this thing to the next stratosphere. All right, enough of that. We are excited about this curation. Actually, this one has been a long time coming. So this month we decided the pod talks Spielberg, right? If you are my age, even probably Alex's age, Spielberg
we're not that far apart in age.
We're old enough apart.
You make it seem like we are light years apart. We're not.
I am Mr. Miyagi. You are Ralph Macchio.
No, but keep going.
I am training you to wax on and wax off. Clearly, it's not taking. That's fine.
Just keep going. Finish your bit. Let's do it.
All right. Before I was so rudely interrupted by this new young generation, we decided we would talk Spielberg. If you're our age, more my age, but also Alex's, Steven Spielberg had an almost genetic level altering effect on your child. Some of my all-time favorite movies Steven Spielberg made, Steven Spielberg produced, had a hand in. It's become a new thing, too, that we've realized on film Twitter to kind of flame Spielberg, right? The overrated horn is beginning to blow, all this kind of stuff. If you don't love and respect Steven Spielberg, I have less time for you than most other people. I think he is, bar none, one of the greatest film directors who's ever lived. I enjoy what Steven Spielberg does so much that I'm glad we're actually going to get to it. So we thought it'd be fun today to start with Steven Spielberg's Duel. Alex, had you seen Duel before? Opening thoughts on Duel.
No, I hadn't actually. I had only known of it. It was a movie of the week written by Richard Matheson, and those are the only things I knew.
The great Richard Matheson, yeah. Yeah, no, it's a cool movie because a lot of the kind of gusto of Steven Spielberg's filmmaking style, you can see some of the roots of it in here, right? Because ostensibly, this is two cars driving at less than 100 miles an hour after each other, right?
Right.
Feels like the kind of thing that would get really boring really fast. But there's some real fucking gusto to this movie, right? I love the visuals of this film, right? I love the visuals of the car chases. I love when we decide to bring the camera right in on our main character's face as he's beginning to kind of freak out and lose his mind in this empty desert landscape. And again, this movie, it kind of harkens as I watch it. It's kind of the prototype for Jaws, right? This supernatural truck almost just hunting down this guy, right? This giant, larger than life monster film. And so I love this movie, and I'm actually stunned by what they're able to do, because this feels like a movie that within 10 minutes you're like, I would be uninterested in. But it is so fucking captivating once you start watching it. It's hard to look away.
I mean, I think it's the power of Spielberg. Even at that young, even at that early in his career, I think.
Well, if you saw The Fabelmans, he was essentially the Neo of filmmaking.
Yes, that is accurate and true. And Tony Kushner knows it, so that's why he writes 4-hour epics for Steven Spielberg to direct. No. I think what's interesting, I'm glad we're doing this month, because we always try to pick a director every year. Like, I think we did we do Del Toro last year?
Del Toro last year, yeah.
Like, we always try to pick a director every year to do, and I think it's fun to do Spielberg, because when you're in film school, you always have to go through however long it lasts. I think mine lasted probably 2 months. You always go through a phase in film school where you think Spielberg sucks. There's no way around it. Like, you have to go through it. Everyone has it. It's fine. But you have to have that moment where, like, you think that what he does is commercial and overrated. And then
right.
You go
He's not
back
making
out,
serious art for people.
right? And then you go back out to live your life, and you're like, "What the fuck was I thinking?" Like, like you breathe and you think about it for a moment. And you're like, "Oh wait, no, this is literally one of the greatest filmmakers who ever existed." So
yeah, I never had I didn't like Spielberg phase, but I had a point where I was like, "Oh, he's not going to make movies for me anymore."
right,
Like when you get to like War Horse and shit like that, I'm like, "Oh, now he's only making like old uncle movies."
That's a
so
good
I was
way
like,
to
now
put it.
our parts will go a different way.
I think for me, it was right after I got out of film school, or I can't remember. It was around the time Munich came out, where I was like,
I fucking love Munich.
I was like, I don't think Spielberg's for me. He's probably not the guy that I like. He's not the filmmaker that I'm like obsessed with. And then I saw Munich. I'm like, what the fuck was I thinking? Munich is awesome, and so is Steven Spielberg. And yeah, I do not think there's a single person alive. Actually, I would say even like not even people like from our childhood, like adults who just watched his movies. I think everybody's lives are somehow touched by Steven Spielberg in a way that you can't really necessarily fathom, but all of us have this like cultural indoctrination of Steven Spielberg's movies somewhere in our lives. There are things about
he's made a couple movies that are so fucking wide spanning in pop culture. I
That's
mean, just
the thing
between
is like
Jaws and
E.T.
and Jurassic
Park.
Like some of these movies, they fucking really have
Like,
reach.
It changes the fabric of culture sometimes when he makes movies. And that's pretty not many directors do that.
No, well, what happens
pretty
is
much no one.
when you're a younger man, you're looking for these guys that have all this fucking pizzazz, right?
Yeah.
It's like I remember loving Spielberg and George Lucas, obviously. Those are like big guys in my childhood.
Mm-hmm.
Then as I got older, right, you start finding like Kubrick.
Yeah.
You start finding David Lynch. You're like, oh, there's something extra here. This will make me different.
Yeah.
These are movies that a lot of my peers weren't watching, so it made me feel special. Or like, oh, look at all these extra meanings, right? Spielberg always feels very kind of surface familial Americana to me, right?
Right.
Like one of his great powers, we'll talk about in E.T., which we are going to do, is just that taking us into like a family home that felt like a family home we knew.
Right.
So there was something about those extra arty films, right? And then we start getting guys like Aronofsky and, you know, these guys of my film school era.
Yeah.
Where you're like, oh, these guys have that extra thing that Spielberg doesn't understand. And I think it's one of those, as you get older and you go back and watch his early movies. Like, even, especially Duel is a great example of this. What looks like such a fucking basic concept.
Mm-hmm.
He really finds these ways to pull so much more out of it visually.
I think what you get from Duel, and this is like a really fascinating thing, is Spielberg's first go around at being it's his first directing move. It's a movie of the week. No one is expecting much from it. And I think that's like the secret.
I think he had done a little TV, and then this was like his step up.
A little bit. This was his first like feature. And like I think the first TV thing he did was like did an episode of it was one of the anthology series they put out in the 80s, I think. 70s or 80s, I don't remember.
70s,
But either way, Duel is this fascinating thing where it's written by Richard Matheson, so like it has this Twilight Zone pedigree, and it does kind of feel like a long Twilight Zone episode, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
But in the hands of Spielberg, it becomes like an actual movie. It's really fascinating to watch because those movies of the week, I don't know if you remember those. Like I only
Fucking
watched
love that,
the.
dude. I grew up on those kind of movies.
I watched a lot of those in like when I was sick from school and stuff like that because my mom would watch them. So
they were kind of like this, like Lifetime movies before Lifetime movies.
Oh, that's exactly what they
like
are.
An archaic Lifetime kind of thing. But some of them, it was real like cheating husbands, like going to kill someone. Like a lot of that shit we watched all the time.
Yeah, some reasonably tacky plot that just like turned into like, oh wow, yeah, okay, cool, it's fun.
It was like the pulp novels kind of being pillaged for ideas that you could make just palatable enough for me and my mom to watch.
Right, exactly. So like, if you see. But Duel is doing this complete. Like, the Duel's one of those things I feel like if someone was watching and expecting what we're talking about, like, oh, I did not like that. And that would be like the end of the story. Like, that's like sort of the bit. So, but when we watch it now, and especially you watch it as like Steven Spielberg's first feature-length movie, it's a real movie. Like, it's really fascinating because it really does take on this otherworldly. It's such a because again, I could not but besides the Spielbergness of it, I really couldn't break away from how I was just like, this is like a really long Twilight Zone episode. Like it felt like that
because it doesn't feel like. I feel like if you showed this to someone who had no concept of what it was, you wouldn't peg it as a Spielberg movie immediately. There are some things like. I thought the score was very reminiscent of a Spielberg movie, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
There were some things I saw, and I was like, all right. But I think what it is he finds ways to make mundane themes feel cinematic.
Yeah.
Right? So I think that's like one of those, like, even as a very young director who doesn't probably have his full fucking, like, force yet, you can see the choices are just interesting. You can see the choices are made for a film, not a made-for-TV film.
Yeah.
Right? There's some real kind of art going on.
Yeah.
But I think what's fun, right, is because it does take on this law. I mean, that's kind of the Twilight Zone thing to me is it's one of those, like, what if the rules of society stopped existing? Right? So we just have this fucking square driving around, and all of a sudden this fucking truck, for literally no reason, right? They kind of pass each other once or twice, right? Like a classic, like, dad angry in the car, like, this motherfucker.
Yeah, yeah.
They start passing each other, and that's it. And then it is this constant series of escalations, right? Where this one man just decides me or him are dying today, or both.
Yeah.
And I love the way, because the desert becomes this very isolating environment. So even as we see other people in diners or other cars, Spielberg always keeps this guy so fucking alone and isolated. Right? Whether it's him telling the attendant who's like, hey, you need a radiator hose. He's like, yeah, right, this fucking upselling bitch.
Yeah.
Right? Or it's the lady with like the snake farm. Or he walks into the diner after he smashed the fence so everyone already thinks he's a fucking crazy guy.
Yeah, yeah.
And he's wearing a tie. He's not dressed like a fucking, Southwesterner. So there's always something that keeps him at fucking bay. Right? And the only time we see him have any like kind of, he has human contact is the school bus driver. But then he's worried about these asshole kids getting run over.
Right.
So it really becomes this, if the rules no longer apply, what do you do? And it's funny because I remember, I can't remember if it was in the Spielberg documentary or, because they have one on HBO, now going to be The Max, as if the Saved by the Bell kids will hang out there. By the way, fuck The Max. Fuck that app.
Correct.
Neither here nor there. Ultimate ad-free, my balls. The Max is already going to have been a thing for a while by the time this comes out. So we just sound retrospectively angry. I can't even remember what I was saying. I was so fucking mad about HBO Max.
It's stupid.
It's a fucking stupid idea for an app. But,
yeah.
Anyways, neither here nor there.
Either way, I think like for me watching it, what's the unique, and you've been out here long enough. You were out here long enough to know it is like the proliferation of like anything you'd ever want to have happen is like, oh man, how badly would you want just like honking your horn at someone's mildly to just escalate to the point where you're like, oh, I'm gonna fucking kill this guy now.
Oh
like,
yeah,
there
this is
this
like lonely falling down.
yeah. This is the proliferation of road rage that all of us sort of like half dream of or like think might happen. But this is also why this is funny. It gave me this. I had a really terrifying road rage incident like days after Henry was born, and this is what it reminded me of it because Andrea after Henry was premature, so Andrea had to stay in the hospital a little longer. She had a couple of complications. So the day she was coming home, I was like, "Hey, what do you want to eat?" She's like, "I could really use like a nice like cheeseburger." I'm like, "Okay, cool." So I drove down to get a cheeseburger for her, and this guy was supposed to turn in front of me. He was supposed to turn right into this parking lot, and he just wasn't turning. So I was just like, I wanted to get this food. I wanted to get it hot back. So I went back to Andrea. So I did the thing you're really not supposed to do. I laid on my horn like an asshole.
You son of a bitch.
The guy turned. I'm like, great, cool. I'm driving down the road, and I hear tires squealing behind me, come rocketing down the road. And I'm like, I'm on Ventura, and in the valley, it's a pretty mild street. Like, it's a busy street, but it's pretty mild. Rocketing down towards me. I'm like, holy shit.
He's going to put your dick in the dirt.
I'm like, oh my God, that's the guy. So he gets into the median lane, pulls up right next to me, and cuts me off on the road. And I'm like, what's going on? So I try to pull over off to the side. He tries to cut me off again to not pull off to the side. I'm like, what the fuck is happening? Finally, I pull all the way over. I sit in my car for a second. I'm like, do I just get out? And this guy's already getting out. So he gets out of the car. I get out of my car and I'm like, yes. And he's like, I should fucking shoot you in the head. And I'm like, what? Why? And he's like, you don't fucking think? You don't fucking think? You lay on your horn like that, you fucking asshole. I'm like, man, my wife's been in the hospital. I'm having a bad day. I'm sorry. He's like, oh yeah, you're having a bad day? That's my whole fucking life, bro. I should fucking blow your fucking head off. He walks back to his car and opens his passenger side door. I'm like, oh my God, this guy's going to put a gun to my head. And then he also opens up his back seat doors. He's driving like a Suburban, and he has two car seats in there. And I'm like, are you telling me that you have children, but they're not here right now? I don't understand what's like.
That's why I was so fucking ready to fight to the death.
Yes, and so I was like, oh hey, we have the same car seats. That's cool. And he's like, you have a fucking bad day. Every day of my fucking life's a bad day. Who the fuck do you think you are? I'm like, dude, I just want to go. Like, I don't want to deal with this right now. And he's like, that's right. Get the fuck out of here. And I'm like, all right, I'll talk to you later, buddy. And I got back in my car, drove away. Weirdest thing I've ever had happen to me in Los Angeles, bar none. Never had anyone threaten to shoot me in the head just for laying on my horn. But important lesson learned, I don't honk at anybody anymore.
Oh, I fucking honk like crazy. Dude, I have all kinds of road rage issues.
I just
They're not normally me, but I get them directed at me. I'll never... The one that I was totally at fault to. So me and my friends used to do this thing. We lived in the country. And, it's Indiana, so there's like these 2-lane roads, right? So these fucking 2-lane roads where you're going pretty fast. And I don't know why me and my friends thought this was a good idea. As an older man, I am horrified at my behavior.
Right.
So you're like, we could have fucking killed someone.
Sure.
Right?
Everyone
like, we were
has
so
those.
fucking stupid.
Yeah.
But we used to go to the fucking like local little pizza place. We lived in a small one-stoplight town. And we get all these orders of breadsticks, right? And get all these extra like cups of cheese, right? Those little fucking dipping cups. And we'd be going like 60, 70 down this fucking like 50 mile per hour, like 2-lane highway in the country. And if a car was coming opposite of us, one of us would lean out of the back window and fucking throw the cheese so it would explode all over their windshield, right?
Oh my God.
And you think it's fucking hilarious, right? We grew up watching Jackass and we're like, oh, we'll do pranks, like whatever. Never in my wildest dreams did I be like, I could cause someone to drive off the road and fucking die.
Right.
And like, what if that person had kids? What if that person was like an elderly grandma driving her kids home and cheese blows up on her car, and because of her old reflexes, she dies. And the kids die. Like, it never crossed our minds we could do any harm.
Right.
So one time, we fucking drill this dude with cheese. We just hear, "Arr!" And he does like a fucking Fast and the Furious burn. Like a U-turn. We're in my friend's mother's van. Like this old piece of shit van. And so I was like, my buddy's like, what do I do? And I was like, just fucking, let him get close. So I'm fucking whipping everything in the car at him. I mean, I fucking was throwing everything. I threw like a fucking ice scraper. And so this guy is fucking pissed. And my plan was, I was like, he's like, what do I do? And I go, drive super slow. He goes, what? And I go, drive so slow that he gets so bored that he'll stop falling. That was my great plan, right? Because I was so stupid. This was before I realized he could have just written down our license plates number and like call the cops.
Yeah.
But clearly this guy was a fucking moron too. And so he followed us. I'm fucking not exaggerating. An hour and 15 minutes of driving 20 miles an hour down backcountry road, going as slow as we can. He's fucking honking. We're like flipping him off and fucking throwing shit at him. And this went on for so long until finally he just fucking like changed directions. He was so mad. He probably had somewhere he had to be. But it's one of those things you don't think about. And that's what I thought was funny in this movie, right? Is the guy's like, oh, you think you can just turn your truck into a weapon?
Yeah.
And it doesn't dawn on us how we let young fucking idiot people, and then even older people are fucking morons, right? Like,
Yeah.
there are guys who get like those, like, I have a small dick cars, and they just fucking burn it through my neighborhood.
All the
Like,
time.
they're not worried about
All the
running
time.
down a kid. And I was like, we just let people, I think the average populace is so fucking dumb and immature and irresponsible. And we let people drive these fucking small missiles.
Yes.
Right? And like, I was so fucking stupid as a kid. It never dawned on me I could kill someone and my life as I knew it would be over because I threw a cheese cup and killed someone.
Right.
It's, I think there's so much, like, we have so much irresponsibility, and then everyone gets so fucking mad because everyone's so selfish. I got to be where I want to be right now, right? We have this all the fucking time when I'm out there. Right. I'm guilty of it too. It is fucking insane, and this movie does this great job of like, yeah, these are murder weapons. I remember what I was saying about HBO Max. Sorry, the Max. I don't want to get fucking yelled at. But they have that Spielberg documentary, which is great. And I think it's in that documentary where George Lucas talks about he was at like a big Hollywood party. And someone told him like, hey, there's this, cool movie on TV. And he's like, what? And he went in, he found this like small, quiet like den or whatever in the middle of this Hollywood party. And he said he started watching it and he couldn't leave the room until he had finished it. And it was Steven Spielberg's Duel. So I thought that was a cool story.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think what's interesting about Duel, and this is the thing that I actually really loved about it, because this truck driver's unseen like the entire time, short of like some boots and a couple of arms.
We see a hand, we hear a voice at one point, right? But essentially nondescript.
It's a nondescript, just random. Like, so to me, what's fascinating because of that, there's this omniscience to the. There's this omniscience. It's this unknowable. It's this unseeable, unknowable force. Like, it's just this truck. What transcends the movie past like movie of the week or like what we're talking about, like this Hallmark Channel shit, Lifetime movie thing, is that alone provides this subtext of what we're talking about, which like we both have these collective strange road rage incidences with people who are just like out to get us. Like, that's the thing that connects with people, is it transcends this 1-to-1 ratio of like, oh, I see a thing, I know a thing. The subtext of like you can start assigning subtext when you don't have just like a guy in a truck. It's not two guys against each other. It's literally a guy versus himself.
Yeah, the truck becomes this supernatural predatory force, right? Because the movie kind of rests on, there's this fucking, square. I think he's a salesman, right?
He's a salesman, yeah.
He's got his little button-up shirt, his little tie. He's fucking condescending to the gas station guy. He goes in like, he's like, I think we need to talk to her wife. And she's like,
yeah, clearly not a great husband.
The wife says, this guy pretty much tried to rape me in front of the whole party last night. And he's like,
yeah.
Oh, calm down. Like, cool your tits. It's like, what?
Yeah.
What?
That
so
I was
immediately
like,
we're just
whoa.
like, this guy is a fucking douche of the highest order, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But you putting him in this where now he's in this situation where he's like the city folk versus the country folk, right? And we just watch this guy it's so strange because like we're not rooting for him, nor do we want to identify with him.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this is something that's aged differently. Like maybe in the 70s, everyone saw him. They're like, that's a cool square jaw guy. I saw him and I was like, look at this fucking doofus, this fucking pussy moron. Right? Like I had no interest in like identifying with that guy. And so the movie's asking us this whole time, like, you have to root for this guy to survive, even though you don't want to in any way.
Yeah.
Like, there was a small part of me, it's like, so what? He gets run off the road. Like, we just have one less douche in the world.
Yeah.
Now we have a murdering truck driver. That's not good either, right? So it is kind of like, can they bring each other down, right? Like Van Helsing and Dracula and Monster Squad. They drag each other into the nethers. But it's this really great place for a setup, right? And I love the slow escalations. I think that's the other thing, right? Because the truck becoming omniscient, right? I think is really important. I don't know if omniscient's the right word, but this kind of
I think it's exactly how I describe it. It is
right.
It's
an ever-present supernatural. It's almost like this predator like forms out of the landscape, right? Like
absolutely.
And I was like, I don't know, is this like a thing about like consumer culture, right? Like the fucking gas guzzling culture, so the gasoline trucks killing people. It didn't matter because eventually it just became the desert itself was trying to kill this guy.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what I thought, because after he had that phone call where he pretty much apparently raped people in front of a woman in front of him.
His wife got accosted by another man, his
neighbor,
right.
And sorry,
he's just like, like what?
So after he has that conversation, I'm like, oh, is this guy just like trying to run away from? Is that he's trying to like run away from his problems? Like, to me, because it was like a Matheson story too, I was like, are we going to get to the end and find out this truck isn't real and he like runs himself off the road? Like, there was a part of me that I'm like, are we going to get to the end and this truck is literally like in his mind and this is like all his problems barreling towards him? Like, I'm like, which was cool too. And honestly, it still works regardless. But like, that was my initial thought, is now the truck is not necessarily just a truck that's like annoying him. It's this, combination of all these things in his life that are bothering him. It's all this stuff that like he seems to be almost powerless against. And it's not like he's like, he's the one who brushes off this woman, his wife literally getting raped by a neighbor. So like,
right.
Not a great guy.
But he's just a fucking like weasel of a man.
Right.
And so there's these times, right? Like as things start to bump, right? The trucker bumps him.
Yeah.
Things are happening, right? And also just like the basics of, why can your car not smoke this truck, right? And he's like, oh, how's it going so fast? It gives it this extra layer. This like, how does he just know where you are? Yeah. Just start taking weird roads. Like you'll lose him. But there is this kind of supernatural tinge to it, right? But I love like great scenes, right? So you can't do the car chase thing for a movie. It would get so fucking boring that we wouldn't even, especially this guy we don't care to and we don't really empathize with, right?
Right.
I guess on some level you don't want to be like in your day-to-day like square life and think like a trucker's going to kill you.
Yeah.
But other than that, there's like no real empathy formed with him, right? So I think it's even more impressive what the movie does. But they give us scenes, right? Like he goes into this place, he's having a piss, he just smashed a fence. He's like, all right, it's over. He's like, you just think, because this is the one bad choice of the movie, right? Is he's in the bathroom and this voiceover starts, and I didn't know what it was. I thought it was someone in the stall talking to him. I'm just like, wow, like really pointed, like this guy's also having a bad day. And he's like, you're just out there and the cords you think are holding you up cut you down, you're back in the jungle. But that's all right, it's over. And then you're like, oh, it's a shitty voiceover.
Yeah.
He goes and he orders like a cheese sandwich and wants ketchup, like weird shit. Like again, you're like, ew, this guy sucks. But he's just watching, right? And he sees the truck. So now he's like scared. And he's doing this, what do I do? Right. And he's looking at everyone in the diner, right? This camera move that's beautiful. It pans across the diner. All their faces are out of focus, right? Because we're focusing on him behind them. And he's like, do I see the boots? Do I see, a lot of them have boots. Do I see this? In those moments of him panicking and trying to figure out, he's like, why didn't I leave? That's the one thing about this movie that brings it down a little bit for me is the voiceovers. It's such a confidently directed film. Just fucking follow your nose. Like those visuals are plenty. We don't need him going, maybe that's the guy. We know he's thinking, is this the guy? You've done the visual work to set it up. That reeked of like studio interference.
That's what I was gonna say. It also, yeah, same. I think it's one of those things like these. So I read that it was shot in 13 days and cut in 10 for broadcast.
That's incredible.
Which is pretty insane. I mean, granted, if that's the pace,
especially the edit. Like this edit is fucking sharp, razor sharp.
If you cut, if I did not know that's how quickly movies of the week got cut. So like, I thought literally it just was a movie of the week. Like you just had it in the back catalog. So that's pretty impressive. But yeah, that feels like a studio note. Is like, we don't really know what this guy's thinking. Can you please put some stuff in there that just says like, oh, this guy's like, oh, okay, cool, yeah, whatever. Like that's. And, Spielberg, and early enough in his career, has, like, no power over anything. So he's just like, yeah, sure, whatever you want. Like,
he's a guy delivering a job.
Yeah. Which, again, he's doing his job. And, like, Spielberg is obviously a competent enough director.
Excelling
even
at
at
his
a young
job. Yeah,
age.
doing backflips.
Yeah. But, you have to pick your battles. And I'm sure that was one of them where he's like, I'm not going to win this one, but I get to at least edit this thing so that it's awesome. I'll throw in some shit. I'll throw in some shitty VO just because.
Well, no, he picked his fights. Like his big fight for this one, I remember him talking about, was at the end they wanted the truck to blow up, right? This glorious exclamation point.
Yeah.
And he's like, I fought hard to kill this monster, is how he described it. He described the truck as a monster. And he said he wanted that shot of the oil leaking down and seeing the monster bleeding to death.
Yeah.
So he fought creatively hard, and he's like, I don't want the explosion. I want that oil shot. I think you could argue the slow death of that truck does almost nothing for me. Right? At the end of the movie, when the cars crash, right, and it's a dust bowl, I don't see the truck anymore. I'm like, movie's over. I'm completely 100% checked out. But I like that he's like, this is important, and I'll fight for it. If you're going to fight for something that's actually worth fighting about.
Sure.
And I think they saw it's worth it. At that point, no one gives a fuck what's happening in that movie. Yeah. So, right, the executive's probably like, what does an explosion matter? Who fucking cares? Mm-hmm. And those shots of it dripping and the tires still spinning, they're beautiful. They're beautifully laid out. They just don't have any impact anymore. But I think it's fun to hear him talk about that was like his fight for the movie. Is that I want to see this monster bleed instead of explode. And I think it gets to that Spielberg core. Because that guy knows what to put on the screen.
Yeah.
Even if you have umbrage with other things, like he knows what to fucking show us. Mm-hmm. And why it matters that he shows us. Yeah. Right? I mean, and it's nice to see that he had that from an early age. Because, again, he's the chosen one of filmmaking.
It's true. And that is exactly why, that's why that last sequence is so cool, just overall. Like, and I agree. Like, I'll be honest with you. Yeah, an explosion would also do, like, nothing for me. Like, it's one of those, like, to me, that's a bad punctuation mark. Like, that's, like, it's, like, that's bad punctuating.
Well, it's like they're exploding our mind, right? As it is, we sit and we're just like, oh, fuck.
Yeah.
Like, we're actually sitting with him and pondering the whole, last 2 minutes of that movie. You're just going, what the fuck was that about? Yeah. What happened? Why did that guy decide he was going to murder everyone?
Yeah.
Like, what was his day like? You're actually still kind of working in your brain, whereas if you do an explosion, that's it.
Yeah. I think the slow leak gives you that sort of, it's the walkaway thought. Like,
or this guy was so excited he ran that car over that he nutted.
Sure.
I'm just asking questions. I
hope that guy's okay. That black nut looked real bad.
No, I'm saying that the fucking supernatural truck's like, ugh.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Oh, you're saying the truck is... See, like, that's what we're talking about.
I think this was the first truck nut, is what I think. I think maybe the truck was like, I finally tapped the car. This is all I want. Before I go out, one more. He died. That truck died the way we all hope we do. With his belly covered in truck nut. No, we didn't see any humans. We don't care about that. This is a romance.
I don't know what's in the truck, but
I do like the idea that it's a story about like two Herbie-style cars that just want to touch each other, and these two white men like not letting that happen. I have an appointment. God damn it! I'm going to lose the account. You can't be in love.
and like the car winks, and then they go and do the thing. Yeah,
Different kind of explosion, eh, Spielberg? Very crafty.
very.
That's a
sneaky.
veteran trick you had in your bag as a rook. I like it.
Wow, way to fit sex into that one, Spielberg. Nicely done. That's not a thing we see often from Spielberg movies, is sexiness. That's fun.
Well, no, because he filmed his mom and the guy having an affair, so he can't have sexiness anymore.
Stop.
I'm just saying what the Fablemans told me.
It is
I
interesting
do have to say, everyone loved the Fablemans. The propaganda-ness of that movie was kind of like, come on. Are we doing like a really self-reflective movie here, Spielberg?
Yeah, like
you were just already this world-class filmmaker, and all these little Boy Scouts were like tugging their pud when you showed them your war movie. Really?
there is a little look. Here's the thing. When
do your victory lap. You fucking earned it.
Exactly. Like, this is like what it is to me is like when I see the Fablemans, I'm like, when you pretty much own Hollywood, you can write whatever fucking story you want for your origin.
I mean, he put Fable right in the title. Like, I get it.
Yeah, I get it. It's fine.
I get it.
But,
you're the little chosen one. That's fine.
And
you're
then
Neo here to save us from all those boring movies of the week. That's fine.
I mean, and then you cast David Lynch as John Ford, and you let him do the David Lynch thing.
That was fucking cool. That was probably the best part of the movie.
I'll say this: all 2.5 hours of the movie leading up to that made it pretty worth it. That was really fun.
It's a fine movie. I'm not shitting on the movie. I'm just saying I don't love. It's the same reason I don't like war movies that have like a propaganda rah-rah effect. This felt a little bit like Spielberg, like kind of twisting the mythology a little bit.
When you rule
really
Hollywood,
put a harsh lens on his own mom, not on himself, not on yourself.
Really burned her to the ground.
Steven.
Hello? Steven? Hello?
Oh, you want to put your mom's affair on blast? But we got to know that you know fucking motion cuts and techniques from an early age, Steven. Steven, you knew how to do special effects while your mom was banging the neighbor, Steven. Neither here nor there.
Hello.
This is actually like my worst nightmares that Steven Spielberg finally listens to an episode, and it's this.
This is the episode.
And then there's a world where Steven Spielberg's like, those two fucking pieces of shit, I hate them.
Those two fat whites are gonna get absolutely.
I think what this movie does though is, again, it's a movie that should fucking run out of gas. Earlier in the runtime,
like 30 minutes in, for sure.
Yeah, this, like, as a Twilight Zone episode, this makes perfect sense. How do they keep us engaged? But there is just there are weird shots of like, why does he run after the truck multiple times? There's this, I am a fucking middle class white guy. This can't be happening. He runs after that truck, and I was like, what happens in your mind? You think you're going to fucking stop this truck, pull the guy out, and, like, beat him senseless? Like, what do you think's going to happen?
Yeah.
Well, but there is this, like, he's just this American guy. He can't fucking fathom. Like that scene when he's in the fucking bar, and he, like, slinks up to the one guy who's by himself, right? So he's not going to say that to the bar full of fucking, boot-wearing guys.
Right.
He goes to that one guy eating a sandwich. He's like, hey, man, knock it off. And he fucking smacks the sandwich. There's a part in his mind where he feels he has big enough truck nuts, he can fucking smack this guy's sandwich.
Well, see, and this is the part
immediately gets his fucking ass kicked.
But
he's still running after the truck. He's still doing this like, I will not be fucked with. And it's like, but you are.
But see, that's like that's the distinctly like American thing about it is you see someone who you think is your aggressor. So your immediate response is, what I'm going to do is confront it, and I'm going to win by confronting it. And that's not how
this guy's trying to kill you.
Works.
Yeah, and you're going to say knock it off, and he's going to go, my bad.
Hey, that one's on me. That one's on me, gay. Sorry.
That's what I'm saying. He's still living in his fucking like suburban mind.
Yeah.
And he's out here, as he said in the urinal, in the terrible voiceover, you're in the jungle now, baby. Axl Rose. Quoteth Axl Rose. You in the jungle, baby. And he just can't. And so that's what I like, is there is this real kind of like uncoupling the two worlds.
Yeah.
And we just start bringing it down. Like there are these shots at the end where he's just like, his car is spun sideways. He like drifts into a stop, or they're like nose to nose. And it's just these two fucking entities. Like, now we're fighting to the death. This is it. Now we're going to go for it. And I thought that part worked really well.
I mean, I think again, the strength of the movie to me is actually the viewer introspection. And I think that's what really
The
is.
viewer introspection. What does that mean?
I mean, because there's not a lot of dialogue, because a lot of this lives in, just diegetic sound and stuff like that.
Right.
To me, like, you have to spend a lot of time thinking to yourself, like, putting yourself in the guy's shoes, and not like, yeah, there's terrible voiceover and whatever. Like, that's like movie of the week fodder. But because there's not a lot of dialogue, and because you're just sort of sitting there like with this look on your face, and like the whole time, like this, just like sort of dumbfounded, like what is going on. What you have to do is start thinking about why and how and what is going on, and like that starts
Why
generating.
would I lose it so bad I want to kill someone
Right.
on the road?
That's what starts generating that subtextual conversation, and that's what makes this movie different than other movies of the week, and why Steven Spielberg is Steven Spielberg, because he knew that this movie, well, it was because it's a short story originally that Richard Matheson wrote. So what he knew was he has to take a movie and make it an hour and a half long. So how do you make this short story about a guy chasing a truck down interesting?
40 minutes of driving, you still have another 40 minutes plus.
Right. How do you make this work?
Yeah, this guy existing outside of the car.
You do what Spielberg has done his entire career, which is you mystify an audience by simply forcing them to sort of like kind of like look at themselves in the mirror in a way and say like,
Right.
what would I do?
Well,
like,
the visceral
you're
nature
making
of how
people
they
wonder.
shot the chases, right? Like that pulls you in, right? The beautiful script work of just what would you do if you were in a diner and you knew the guy that was trying to kill you was in there? Beautiful scene, right? So you get these kind of like this perfect thing. I think what's really fun about Duel, and I think my biggest takeaway from Duel, is that it kind of makes me sad we'll never see Steven Spielberg do this work again.
Yeah.
Like he's ascended to such a level. The idea of watching Steven Spielberg make a really fucking small bullet of a movie, right? Like just a small, great premise that I'm going to execute the shit out of.
Yeah.
Right? It's kind of like my buddy Heath says this sometimes when we're working on short films, where he's like, I want to take like one of your dumb scripts and shoot it to the point that it elevates. And I was like, ouch, that's offensive. But also I agree. No, I'm just playing. I know Heath listens.
But that's
But
exactly what.
he
But that's
says
what
that.
writers want.
I want to take something that should, on the surface, if you pitched it, like told him, hey, here's this story, and they go, what? And he wants to shoot it so well that it becomes higher than what it should be. And I think that is what Spielberg did with this. And I just think it's sad we'll never see him make this kind of movie again.
It's sad, but like that's what makes watching this
too fucking big.
It's what makes watching this movie bittersweet, because you realize like
Right.
you also
I
realize
would rather
like,
have 10 of these than another Ready Player One. You
the
could
other
probably
thing-
do 50 of these for the cost
Well,
it was.
besides that, though, like the other thing I think about is what actually like makes me sort of wistful for it is Spielberg did this, and then like so quickly became the blockbuster man that we all know he is, because he's Steven Spielberg. Like he never really made like 3 indies and then got a shot. Like he literally made this, and then I mean, what, Jaws? Like what's
might
the
have
next
gone
movie?
right to Jaws from this, if I
Like,
remember right.
And we all know Jaws is this massive blockbuster movie. Like it's just this, but like,
Oh, I mean, like one of the seminal movies of our lifetime.
right. It's weird to think that this is like the only quote unquote indie that Spielberg ever made. I mean, granted, there are other indies he made, but either way, like this is the only like small movie he ever made. Everything else has become this huge thing. It's fascinating, but I get what you're saying. Like it's
Okay.
fascinating and still sad.
So, as I have it here, this can't be right. 'Cause they said there's another, I've never even heard of this, a Steven Spielberg directed movie, Something Evil. I don't think I've ever even heard of that.
Interesting.
But yeah, so
Okay.
Jaws is like his first like big movie. Yeah, this doesn't even have Duel listed on it, so there has to be something wrong on this list.
Sugarland Express. That's the second movie. That's the next movie
Sugarland
he
Express, that's what I was missing, yes.
made. That's what it is.
Okay. Oh, this has him as an actor. Holy shit. Okay, so I was looking at Steven Spielberg's actor list. My bad. So I guess Steven Spielberg's in a movie called something Evil.
So Duel, Sugarland Express, Jaws,
Sugarland Express.
Close Encounters, 1941, Raiders, E.T. Like, he never stopped.
Okay, he did direct Something Evil as well. Then something called Savage with Martin Landau. Then
What are these
so he had a couple. He had two more what looked like movies of the week.
Yeah.
Then he did Jaws, Close Encounters, 1941, which I'm sure he would forget. And then it's like, then he just went on and fucking
went on
like
the run. Like, that was it.
He went on the run.
Yeah. No,
honestly, I would say Jaws, Close Encounters, and 1941, Raiders, E.T., Twilight Zone, Indiana Jones, Color Purple.
Yeah.
Amazing Stories I've never heard of. Empire of the Sun, Indiana Jones, Hook. Like, he's been on a run essentially his whole career.
Yeah, like, he's never not.
Because you could also say reboot at Jurassic Park, right? Jurassic Park, Schindler's List, Lost World, Amistad, Saving Private Ryan, AI, Minority Report.
Like, he's never. This is the thing is, he never, even the movies that we're all like, it's not my favorite Spielberg.
Right.
Like,
even when you get those, to Tintin, Warhorse, Lincoln, Bridge of Spies, like, who fucking cares about that?
Even
or at least
those,
I'm sure a lot of people do.
But, like, even those are not bad movies. Like,
They're
this is
great
like
movies.
This is a crazy thing. Is like in the pantheon of Spielberg movies, there's not a movie where like, well, that fucking. Well, I mean, I guess maybe 1941, maybe. But like either way, it's like
even then,
was,
like,
but even then,
he tried a comedy.
He tried a comedy, whatever. But you're like, wow, like this guy never missed. It's a weird thing.
Well, even his misses are pretty watchable. But if you look at like the grand career, 80 to 90% of his movies are like beloved.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And 100%. Then you get your film hipsters that want to shit on him because he's a commercially successful director.
It's like, again, everybody in film school has to have, like, it doesn't have to last a long time, or it can last your entire career if you want. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Everyone has to go through that little phase where you're like, well, commercial Spielberg, I'm not really into that. I'm more of an art house guy. And then you get over it, like, and you're like, what was I thinking? Like, this man is literally a master. And
oh, dude, I never liked E.T. I saw it in the theater last summer with my kids when it came back to theaters.
Mm-hmm.
I was fucking blown away by that movie.
It's so good.
Like, he just makes these wonderful fucking tales. He knows what to put on the screen. He always shoots with gusto. He almost always has John Williams doing his score. Yeah. So I'm like, the guy just knows how to fucking get the crew, how to get the shot, how to get it on the screen, and how to normally do that in a really fucking efficient and amazing way.
Yeah.
It's hard. I mean, that's the thing. I can't imagine what is the real argument that Steven Spielberg, even if he had just done like Jaws, Close Encounters, E.T., whatever, that would still be one of the best fucking directing careers that has ever happened. Like, how can you argue that this guy is not, I don't know if you do top 5, 10, right? Maybe you have international directors you like a lot more. Maybe stylistically.
No.
The fact that you could say this guy is not an incredible director. Maybe he doesn't make your flavor of movies. That's fine.
That's fine, but you cannot
can you
deny
not have him as one of the best directors who's ever lived.
He is a like, in the Mount Rushmore of directors, like, he chiseled his own face in there. Like, there's no way you can't have him up there because he is incredible. Like, it doesn't matter. I mean, internationally
he would
or not,
probably be on mine. It'd be him, Kubrick, Hitchcock, probably Kurosawa for me.
I couldn't even tell you.
But that's what I'm saying.
I couldn't even tell you who's on mine.
Take away, like, top 5, tops, whatever. You cannot make an argument that he is not one of the greatest directors who's ever lived.
Yeah.
If stylistically and, like, emotionally, like, Kevin Smith meant way more to me than Steven Spielberg as a young man who decided I wanted to be a movie maker.
Mm-hmm.
I would not argue that he's a better filmmaker. Like, what are we fucking
I don't even think Kevin
about?
Smith would argue that point, actually.
I can tell you for a fact he wouldn't. He always argues that he's not a good director.
Yes.
But it doesn't matter because his movies meant a lot to me.
Right.
Those are mine now. I don't care what he thinks about them. But neither here nor there. I thought this was a good one because, I was telling you I was on film Twitter one day, much to my chagrin, and just realized that apparently Hook, everyone hates Hook. And I was like, I fucking loved that movie when I was little. I watched it
Same.
with my kids. I still fucking love it. It is pretty fucking long.
It's really
But it's fun. It's great.
But it's
It's
great.
got Robin Williams. Like, what the fuck? Like, Dustin Hoffman's crushing it. Anyways, I'm very excited to go through and just watch some Spielberg movies, man. That's
too.
how I feel about
It's gonna be a good
I'm always
month.
excited to be like, we're going to watch them. And then, dude, we could do a whole other curation on just Steven Spielberg produced movies that are
Exactly.
fucking great and kind of have a Spielbergian vibe, right? Then you get into Poltergeist, directed by
Zemeckis
Tobe Hooper,
movies.
right? Yeah, then you get into The Goonies. You get into all these fucking movies that kind of feel like they have some of that Steven Spielberg touch, even though other people directed them.
Right. And like,
Just had a great career, man. And it's still
There's-
going. He was still nominated for Oscars this year.
yes. So hopefully us saying he's one of the greatest filmmakers of all time, and if he listens to this one, has made up for the fact that Griffey flamed him for The Fablemans.
There's no way Steven has made it to the end of this episode, first off. But I do think he is truly like one of the great gifts
is.
that a movie
Absolutely.
lover's ever got.
There's
That's it.
no question.
That's it for Duel. That's not it for Steven Spielberg. We're going to live in this berg for a while more. For the rest of the month, awesome Patreon stuff coming on. So go to patreon.com/Film Alchemist Pod to help us grow the show, help support the show, and get more awesome content. So thank you guys for doing that. The email filmalchemistpod@gmail.com, the YouTube Film Alchemist. Share these episodes with a friend. That'll help us out a lot. Do 5-star ratings and reviews. More than anything, thank you guys for spending time with us this morning. Bye!
Bye.